We're here for Trends. Bidnamic have a Trends report. We have a Trends platform. Let's get into it and see what's going on. So, obviously,
intro, is it?
Yeah, don't worry about it. I've been watching Logan Paul. I know what I'm doing. I'm getting thumbs up from the crew. Relax your bad self. Right, okay. So, obviously, we're here to talk about trends, as I mentioned. I think, obviously, we spoke a little bit before this, Liam, not to destroy the illusion, but regarding what you guys have been doing, how you're looking to grow, and the sort of ways and means that Bidnamic is doing things at present. Are there any key trends that you've noticed out there in the market at present in the world of Google Shopping?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's loads of trends, kind of where to look. I think there's a lot of challenges around, as there always has been, kind of the rising cost per click. Mm-hmm. So, the pandemic was great in terms of it brought a huge amount of offline transactions from the high street, online. Everyone was buying online. But it also created a lot of businesses that were maybe offline that moved online. And when they move online, they go, how do we get customers? How do we connect to that audience? Naturally, Google Shopping makes up the majority of Google search revenue for e-commerce retailers. So that's where they go to. They launch their Shopify store, perhaps. They go onto Google and they start joining that auction, and that is rising the cost per click for all the other participants of that auction. So I think that's one of the big challenges, which year on year we hear the stats of more revenue, more rising cost per click. So I think that's kind of an ongoing trend, but certainly if we look back at the last 12-18 months, that's been pushed up quite a lot because of that. So that's a challenge. So then how do you battle that? How do you get smarter at doing that? So we're one part of the puzzle, which is getting smarter at that product intelligence of which products you're pushing. Are you advertising low margin products? You're pushing high margin products, high converting products. I think you're the other side of the coin, which is after they click on that ad, what do they do? How do you make them smarter at converting that click into revenue? So yeah,
makes sense. I think what we found is, just to kind of follow on from that, is a lot of retailers, certainly last year, they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit from the outset, in that everything just goes into sale. Everything's price first, and I get that to some extent. Where with Google Shopping, it is very much lined up against who's got the lowest price. Something that's naturally what people click into. But people like diving into sales, being first into sale, and things like that, and literally cutting their own throats, really, because they're looking at the neighbours and going, when they into sale, trying to beat each other into it. They've moved into sale. We need to react accordingly. And really, if none of them dived into sale, then you'd still be selling a similar amount of products, I'm guessing, off the back of it.
There is one sort of issue in all this, though, isn't there? Obviously, Liam's mentioned the rising cost per click. Sorry, there is the elephant in the room of Amazon, where they control a lot of the market. They have a massive customer base of millions, if not billions, every month going through the site. How then are you supposed to compete with those guys who can control the price and dictate what they want to sell at? And worst case, start buying product direct in and then eliminate that supplier altogether. How do you control against that?
There might be conflicting opinions on this, but I think at a certain level of the market, I think the race is won for Amazon. I think in the kind of low end kind of accessories, I need it tomorrow. So literally looking at my last half a dozen purchases I've made, I've bought guitar strings. Where will I go for those? It's like a £5 purchase. Go to Amazon. Bought some plectrums. That was part of the same purchase, really. And then things like little accessories and things as Christmas boxes, like go to Amazon. Like check out all in one place. You haven't got to worry about. I think you get to a certain value of product, and then you'll go, right, that's worth going through registration and things like that. So random things. The last thing I didn't buy off Amazon was some dog medicine. So it's like these packs, these multi-packs of dog medicine or whatever, it's worth going through the checkout because it's a necessity, because the dog needs it, basically. So that's where you've driven by that necessity, I guess, to kind of go through the whole process of completing another checkout, registering with a new company. So I think the higher end purchases or the more niche purchases are where you're still going to succeed as a standalone website from Amazon.
Yeah, I think also it's quite interesting. There's quite a lot of price pressure on Amazon in itself. In that winning the buy box, you've got to be the lowest price, and that drives it. But actually, sometimes there's not that that many merchants for those products. So actually the price, there's loads of Amazon repricing tools which go down to win the buy box, but they also go up. So, when there's not that much competition, we assume, it's on Amazon, it's going to be the cheapest. And it's going to be a fair price, but it's not always the cheapest. So you can find it cheaper by going to Google or going to other channels to find that. And the other interesting thing with Google is that, whilst you said, you've got to be price competitive, which I totally agree with, you've not got to be the cheapest. And we see that all the time, that merchants say, right, we've got to be the cheapest. And they've taken that Amazon mindset of got to be the cheapest, got to win the buy box. And they've applied it to Google. But with Google, don't forget, you've got to pay Google the most for that click. So you can't do that if you're super low margin, super low average order value because you've discounted the price down. You can't pay Google, only a few pennies because you've got no margin, and that means that you get outbid and you slide down the carousel, typically 5 positions on Google Shopping, and you don't show up as much. You get less traffic, less sales. So quite often when we work with merchants, we'll actually look at them and say, okay, let's maybe as a part of a strategy is, can we add products? Can we increase the price up a couple of quid? And actually, sure, your margin might not go up because you're going to give that to Google, unfortunately, but you're going to get actually more visibility, more impressions, more clicks and more sales, because the customers aren't always price sensitive. And we see that around 60 to 65% of consumers and shoppers will click on the first position on the carousel, so the most left position. It's known as the top impression, and they'll click on there. And when you ask them, why did you go for that first position? Oh, it's always the cheapest, it's always the most trusted, it's always the quickest. And they think that the mindset that, like Amazon does that hard work for you, does the buy box, filters it, whereas actually on Google, it's not anything to do with the price or the trust or the delivery speed. It's to do with being willing to pay more than the other retailer to get in front of them on the carousel. So actually it's totally different on Google. So it's quite interesting how these two channels play out, that maybe Amazon isn't as price competitive as we sometimes think it is for niche items where there's lower competition, and sometimes Google Shopping isn't as price competitive as we think it is as well. So it's definitely interesting insights.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's funny the psychology behind it, in terms of like where people are clicking and where they become familiar from other websites, I guess, isn't it?
Well, again, it's taking the example of what do people shop on most commonly. It is Amazon. They use Google for search. They use ASOS for fashion, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then it's like we talk about translating that customer experience and going, I remember you always telling us about that a search bar shouldn't be on the left-hand side at the top of a website because nobody ever expects it to be there. Nobody sees it in like a little menu folded away. It's about presenting that relevancy to them, like Liam saying, what do consumers think of, like, as I say, is it the top left one that is the most common one that they'll use because that's what they know. People
want to fit in more than anything else. I was watching something online the other day about sales, and it was explaining how in what you do, if you're offering something that's going to set people apart completely differently, might be more successful off the back of it, they don't want to be the first adopters to it. They want to basically they just want to follow like sheep, really, essentially. They want to be part of the pack. Which is why when you're selling, it's very important to do things like say, these are who we work with. This is the mass adoption of our product we've already had, because no one wants to be the first. No one wants to stand out from the rest, really. And it's the same with retail. You need to fit into a certain way of doing things. I saw a search the other day. It was actually sat in where chat bubble would be, but in the bottom left, that was their search. So you had to click on there, and then it'd activate it in the top of the site. Like, really strange. And you know full well, looking at that their searches are going to be way lower than what someone with an open search prompting you to actually engage with it are actually going to be.
Yeah. And also, it's like pattern recognition, isn't it? When you used to expect, all the, on the independent stores, every store's unique in terms of its look, feel, brand. But actually, that layout is almost a template. It should be a template.
Absolutely.
You should know where the homepage, that the icon, the brand is going to be the left. When you click it, it's going to take you back to the homepage. I remember many years ago, I built a scaled up a marketplace for eco-friendly products, and we thought, it's so cool to put the logo, eco market right in the middle, and no one knew that was the homepage bar, because suddenly you've gone out of that pattern. So it's interesting how you get a real custom experience, but actually it's a custom experience within a framework that people know where things are and how to use them as well. And
I think this is touching on what we were talking about earlier, but I think because people have got so used to a certain layout of website, there's almost an acceptance that you fit in line, but there's there's real reluctance to kind of push the boundaries and try new things at the same time. I don't mean completely stepping out and moving your search into a completely different place, but this acceptance that there is out there that I mean, the stats we see is, I think it's 44.1% of people bounce off a website when they first land into it. And we were doing the maths on it, so we were taking the average order values from your trends report that you pulled together. So we said 100,000 people visiting a website. That's I think it was £51,000 worth of value going into the site. You lose 44% of that. I won't try and do the maths really quickly, but it's literally over £20,000 that you're losing just bouncing out your website. You do that every month. That's just literally on bounce. This isn't even people progressing through the website. Just on bounce, you're losing £250,000, over £250,000 a year, just from that, and nobody thinking, hang on, maybe I should be doing something different here to try and engage people at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely, and we totally see that with that. And I think that 44% stat is great, but also when you start to move to more transactional paid media like Google Shopping, like paid search, like Bing, which we work on day in, day out, you see unfortunately that rising, because you've got things like SEO where someone's put in typically a longer tail, more detailed, more descriptive term. They've gone down, they've clicked onto it through a non-paid link like SEO, and the much lower bounce rate. So when you take that, it kind of skews it up and direct. If someone's looking for that brand, they've typed in Salesfire or the retailer's name, clicked onto it, again, very low bounce rate because they've actively searched it out. Whereas you start to move into paid media, and that bounce rate just starts creeping up. And it's pretty scary with the combination of rising cost per click. So that bounce rate's going up, and the cost of that bounce traffic is going up as well. So
I think it's at a time as well where everybody's focused on how to be efficient as a business. Like you see people talking about, like you've discussed there, Liam, like finer margins, your cost of acquiring traffic is going up, your payments terms might be extortionate, who knows what else is going into it. And the idea is that you want to be able to control and be as effective with your traffic as you can be. So I think in this modern day and age, obviously we've mentioned there about the cost of ads rising and whatnot, and obviously I think Google's feeling the pinch as well. Would it be right in saying they've let a certain size of staff go in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they had some big
layoffs
layoffs recently
or something like that.
That was what it's called, wasn't it? But
yeah, I think all the tech companies are, right. It's I think like you always think, are they really feeling the pinch? They're still making huge amounts of profit, but they're still downscaling, aren't they? So as a lot of other companies are as well. Yeah,
it's just interesting because you think of Google as being almost untouchable to a point, and then it's like, no, actually the real world is affecting companies even of this ilk, and your Shopify's and whatnot along the road as well. I think from what you're saying there as well, and this might just be me presuming something, it sounds like something where you've seen this coming for quite a while in terms of this developing trend of rising cost per click and that sort of margin thinning. How long has this been in the works, if you don't mind me asking, would you say?
Yes, I think there's. Everything's just a slow move of. I think it's just retailers need to be smarter at leveraging everything that they've got. So I think back in the day, I remember I built an e-commerce store. Literally, when I was a kid, literally it was like Amazon wasn't even around. It was like QXL was the big marketplace when I started on e-commerce, like as a kid. And literally, I remember like buying the term head terms like shoes, and it was like pennies. Now that's like literally like tens of dollars, right? And like we see clicks like for like £100 or whatever. It's like we literally, it's moved so much as more retailers have come. They've pushed up that auction, and also unfortunately, retailers getting smarter about it means that they're bringing that kind of unfair advantage, and then other retailers are starting to catch up. So like you mentioned earlier about you go to Amazon, it's so easy to check out, whereas you go to an independent store, it's so much more effort, and that's that was certainly the case. But now Shopify is the number one platform, and they've got Shopify Pay. They just recognise if you've ever shopped on another Shopify store, which you won't know you did, but you will have done. And they've now become the second largest retailer. If you aggregate all their Shopify orders together, they'll be the second largest retailer online. So everyone's gone through it. So then it's it recognises you. You just check out. So what used to be an advantage, having a better checkout, is now it's been normalised. All those retailers who might have very poor other parts parts of their business which haven't been optimized now have a really well optimized checkout, which again makes it much smoother for them to check out, increase that conversion rate. So what was an advantage a few years ago, having an awesome, smooth checkout with very few steps, great usability, is now just been leveled. And now when people get that conversion rate improvement, they go, cool, I can now afford to spend more on ads. And it feels like all these conversion rate improvements go back to the retailer's desire, which certainly we see as grow more revenue, be more profitable. But typically that be more profitable is stay at the profit margin that we're at, 20-30% after everything, or whatever the number is, depends on the vertical. But we see actually it's about growing the revenue, getting more volume through. So then whenever they unlock a conversion rate leap or improvement, the outcome of it is let's spend more on the ads.
Yes.
And the only way to get more traffic is by bidding more, paying more for that exact same click. Or again, getting more intelligent about what clicks they buy and using something like ourselves with purchase intent to make a difference there. So again, it's kind of like this arms race that's every time you get a win, you don't get more profit. You actually end up paying more, being able to pay more, maybe getting more revenue and more pound profit out because you're getting more transactions at the same margin. But actually, everything leads back to just being able to pay Google more, or Facebook, or whichever channel you're getting traffic from. And it's like, okay, it makes sense, but it's also that's what's driving. When you get all this amazing improvement on Shopify's checkout, that just results in a disconnected result, but directly connected is that we're now paying more for cost per click. They add on the awesome things you guys are doing, better product recommendation, exit intent. It decreases the bounce rate, improves the conversion rate. Cool, they'll pick up the call to us and they'll say, great, we can see the conversion rate's gone up, and we'll just automatically be bidding more to get more volume through. And so it's just feels like this cycle that goes to paying Google more, right? It's like or being able to pay Google more. So
they win regardless. It's interesting what you say with Shopify there, because in that battle between all the platforms, it just reasserts their dominance, really, doesn't it? By having this networked kind of payment gateway, whereby the more people that are on it, the stronger they get. They've already got more people on it, so anyone trying to catch them as a platform, they're really going to have to go some. Because that seems to be the thing where it's like, if you can't, you've got to follow that Klarna model, that one click checkout to even compete now. So you need to have them pre-registered. So you need mass to actually do that.
Exactly. And now you've got Amazon Pay, which is a big threat to Shopify, because about 78% of Shopify's revenue comes from their payment fees. So and then Amazon saying, okay, well, we've got all these customers on Amazon. Again, we can just give you that one-click checkout, all the customer details from Amazon. So now you can start to use that, and so that's now a challenge to Shopify, because that's where a lot of their revenue comes from. Rather than charging a lot up front, which can put off entrepreneurs from getting started, they have a kind of success fee, which makes sense on the transaction. But then Amazon will step into that and say, hey, we'll offer it at, and the Amazon advantage of all those customers. But again, I believe it's good, because it's leveling the playing field between an owned independent website URL that you own versus just transacting on Amazon. So it feels like that advantage is Amazon's opening its ecosystem through Amazon Pay and other fulfillment by Amazon, which can be done for independent merchants. But it's all driving it into this. I think Google's getting the beneficiary of it at the moment anyway.
Regardless, aren't they? They do. How long do you see it? I mean, obviously we've just talking about the trends there. We've got what I found quite remarkable was that for the past 8 months, conversion rate year on year is actually up. So we're hitting. So this will be the eighth month we're completing now, where the conversion rate has gone up on sites. So obviously that's probably a combination of people being more selective with what they're purchasing. Obviously our stats don't take into account the likes of Amazon. So Amazon's might have gone down if it's if people are acting differently with some of the low value mass purchases or repeat purchases that you're taking off Amazon. But I found that quite interesting in that conversion rates, and we're talking significantly up as well, up to 10% some months. But I feel as though in the potentially next month, it could be the start of the green shoots of recovery. Been looking at the year-on-year stats in terms of revenue, and the plunge happened. I mean, really, it was January, February last year. So it'll be interesting to see if that continues, or whether this month we're going to start seeing that first slight recovery there.
I think there's definitely murmurs of it that you hear. Like, you see a lot of it on LinkedIn about recovery and how brands are developing. Obviously, last year there was a lot of big name brands that sort of fell by the wayside, but there's definitely space out there, and there's definitely brands you see where they are developing year on year. Like, for example, there was some stats I was reading the other day, and it was around the way that they were not just valuing the overall profits, but it was like, it's like what you've mentioned before about flipping stats on the head and actually looking at customer retention. How many of these people come back to buy 5 times a year or something like that, versus the one-off, never see them again. And I think that's feeding into, again, what Liam says, looking at more of the repeat customer, using that budget smarter to create a customer, and then working it like harder, the relationship, I suppose you'd say.
It's kind of, I guess what I preach quite a lot is that you've got to look at today's money and then tomorrow's money. Yeah. So it's one thing winning a customer, taking their email address and actually trying to get them to purchase, whether directly or through abandoned orders and things like that, driving them back into the site to convert. And then you've got tomorrow's, as in the lifetime value of that client, and more importantly, looking at your own business and the value, your potential exit value of that business. Yeah. So understanding what that list, because when an investor comes along, or someone that's going to purchase your business, they want to know how many customers you've got. Yeah. And I think people forget this. Mm-hmm. They want to know that you've got 100,000 customers, or this many repeat purchasing customers. These are important factors when you come to exit the business. So when someone's looking at their paid search, and they're saying, right, I'm paying 60p a click for this, and I feel as though the margins are quite tight on it, they need to look broader. They need to look more long term with it, and look at what is this driving me long term, which I think people just they're a bit blinkered with it. They're a bit short sighted with it, I should say, where they're just looking at what's that going to generate me this afternoon in terms of sales.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This is like a discipline that we're preaching, I guess, and delivering for our customers, which is, we call it product intelligence. So it's like, if you look at that product, what can you attain, what can you understand from it? So there's kind of overt things about the product itself. Mm-hmm. There's also like the margin. So, you might have 2 products that are both £20, but one is 50% margin, one's 10% margin. Yeah. So you can't afford to put them on the same return on ad spend or the same target, because there's not the profit there, despite them looking very similar, just because of the margin. But there's also then, like you said, the lifetime value. Mm-hmm. So what's the recency, the frequency of the purchases. So that one that's much less profitable in the short term might be an item that they keep replenishing, keep coming back, maybe a beauty product, keep coming back and coming back. Mm-hmm. We also see gateway products where somebody clicks on an item which might be low value, might be low margin, but actually that's not what they buy, or they build a basket all around that, and it's a much bigger basket, much higher value. But if you just look at that product on its own, you would say, why are we spending money on that when it's so low margin and so low value? It's because it's a gateway product, and inversely you get high margin items, high value, which then decrease down. So I think it's really like looking at this element of intelligence of the and also what business you want to become. So if you say, right, we really want to become a running business, build our running customer list, why are you treating it the same as someone buys a kayak from you? Yep. So again, like that company's vision and of the type of customer they want to build and want to retain. And coming back to Amazon, it's like, that's the difference between 2 entrepreneurs that build a business, one on Amazon, where Amazon owns the customer details, the customer relationship. I'm sure none of us can reference the last merchant's name that you bought your guitar strings from. Might have been an independent merchant. We have no idea, with no relationship. And that's the difference, is like, you could have the same revenue and profit, but you're massive lower valuation because you don't have those customer lists, you don't have that identity, and you've not built that brand, which is synonymous with direct to consumer.
Yeah, but that's why I'm always recommending people diversify from just being the Amazon seller, being the eBay seller. Obviously, you've got all these different channels which help turnover, which they're in turn help your buying power with certain brands. But overall, you need to be building your own brand over time. It's no use, because Amazon, the reality is, competitor comes online that undercuts you, potentially it's game over for your business straight away. So that's what we're trying to instill in people is that growth of your own brand, really.
Yeah, Yeah, I remember being in a coffee shop with an entrepreneur who'd built a very big e-commerce business, and at the time I was in e-commerce as well, building a retail business. And he showed me. Remember, it was this day. He flipped up his laptop, and he was like, "We're talking like million pound turnover a day business, very very big entrepreneur from London." And he showed me, and he's like, "This is my business." He showed it to. I remember there were 2 stack charts, and one was maybe 30%, and one was 60%. And he said the 60% was return customers. The 30% was net new customers that day. Yeah. And my mind was blown at the time because, I was just acquiring customers, maybe a tiny percent where I thought I was treating it like revenue from the newsletter, seeing that, are we making a profit on our newsletter or our email, tool, sending those, and treating it a bit like a channel. And he'd been able to build a high, again, he'd built a business in a high retention, in a passion business where people were coming back, done a great job at that through content, through commerce as well. And I was just like, wow, like that is why your business is what it is. Because even if you stop spending that on Google, on whichever channels you're spending on, you would still have 60% of your revenue that day, which is just amazing.
Wild, isn't it? I think we'll wrap this up now, but we do have one final question, Liam. What have you got planned for 2023? Not in a personal sense, by the way.
In a business sense, So at Bidnamic, so we've got, last year we took investment, which is from Gresham. So that's really exciting and has allowed us to take bets, to grow bigger, to be more ambitious. We're already a sustainable business before that. So it's really about doubling down on growth. And that's kind of twofold. One is growth of customers, working with more brands, more retailers, moving into the US. So we've got an Austin office, which we launched there mid last year. We've just doubled that in size this month in January. So that's really exciting. So that real journey of scaling up their US. We also have a really close relationship with our clients. So we've got our first client success team building out there as well in Austin. So we can service businesses locally. So it's again scaling up in the US. We've got loads of trade shows, events we're going to, which is exciting. Again, big focus on the US and also product. So we've been working tirelessly on new product innovations using this product intelligence area that we are and applying it to other channels, but also looking at other areas that we can add value for that customer acquisition piece. So we've got some really exciting products that we're going to be launching over the next and bring to market over the next few months as well. So watch that space this year.
All systems go.
Fingers crossed.